because the U.S. has no territorial claim in South China Sea. So how can the United States make themselves involved in the South China Sea? So freedom of navigation is a very beautiful word. The point is, the United States, the freedom for the United States is not the freedom of merchant ship, it's freedom of their navy, of their military vessels, military aircraft, to freely make reconnaissance activity, to freely intrude into the territorial waters of our countries. So that is the essence.
Hello, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking to Andy Shichen Tian, a former naval captain in the Chinese Ministry of Defense and the current director of the Center of International Law of Military Operations. Captain Tian holds an LLM in Public International Law from the University of Nottingham and is currently doing a PhD in Public International Law at Wuhan University. Captain Tian, thank you very much for coming online today.
Hi, Pascal. Thank you for having me with you on this program. The Neutral Study is a very interesting program. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to share some of my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, you are a specialist on international law, and you are, of course, a part of the Chinese side, or you will give us, that's what I want to ask you, for the Chinese view on how things are developing currently for China, especially also with its military operations in the South and East China Seas. And then finally, in the second part, we will talk about Taiwan. But let's start a little bit with a background for everybody who might not be familiar with the way that the China's military structure is built up, because Chinese military is the People's Liberation Army. How big is the People Liberation Army, and how does it, who controls it politically? Like, what are the different branches under which it operates?
Thank you, Pascal. Conventionally speaking, the PLA is composed of PLA Army, the ground force, PLA Navy, PLA Air Force, and the PLA Second Artillery Force. But as you know, in 2015, President Xi Jinping announced a series of major reforms aimed at transforming the PLA into a more modern and combat-ready force. So the reform in the leadership and command system is a significant measure in response to the call of a modern and specialized military capable of fighting and winning wars in the information age, aiming to improve the operational effectiveness and deployment efficiency of the military. So adhering to the general principle of the Central Military Committee exercising overall leadership, the theater commands responsible for military operations and the services focusing on developing capabilities, the PLA endeavors to enhance the Central Military Committee's centralized and uniform leadership and its function of strategic command and strategic management. So the PLA has dismantled the long-established system of general departments, military area commands, and the force composition with a domination of land force, and established new leadership, new management, and operational command system. So to answer your question directly and more specifically, first, as for the structure of the PLA, now the PLA has established the PLA Army leading organs by integrating the functions of the former general departments concerning the development of the land forces. It has established the PLA Strategic Support Force by combining strategic support forces across the services and the Central Military Commission organs. It has renamed the Second Artillery Force the PLA Rocket Force, and it has established the PLA Joint Logistics Support Force by integrating strategic and campaign level forces, mainly for general purpose support. So as a result, now the PLA is composed of PLA Army, PLA Navy, PLA Air Force, PLA Rocket Force, PLA Strategic Support Force, and finally the PLA Joint Logistics Support Force. So altogether, six services. Thus, a Central Military Committee services, troops, leadership and management system has been put in place. Consequently, by adjusting scale and proportion, the restructuring force composition, 300,000 personnel have been cut to keep the total active force at 2 million. So this is the final figure, 2 million. Second, as for the reorganizing and establishing new Central Military Committee functional organs, I mean, at the very top, to optimize the functional and the institutional setup of the Central Military Committee organs. So the former General Staff Headquarters, the former General Political Department, the General Logistical Department, and the General Armament Departments, we used to call it the 四总部, 4 General Headquarters. They have been reshuffled into 15 organs under the centralized Central Military Committee leadership to advise, execute, and serve. And finally, as for the Joint Operations Command System, I mean from operational level, operational approach, by improving the Joint Operations Command organs of the Central Military Committee and setting up those at the theater level, the PLA has established a lean and efficient Joint Operations Command System composed of permanent and specialized commanding establishments for both peacetime and wartime operations. The former 七大军区, the former 沈阳、北京、兰州、济南、南京、广州 and 成都military area commands have been reorganized into 5 theater commands, namely Eastern Theater Commands, ETC, Southern Theater Commands, STC, Western Theater Commands, WTC, Northern Theater Commands, and Central Theater Commands. Thus, a Central Military Committee Theater Commands Troops Operational Command System has also been established. So this is an overall structure of the PLA now.
So these reforms, were they done with a view of modernizing the PLA? And the theater commands, how do I have to understand them? What are they for? Are they meant as like specific different parts of the defense of like territorial defense of China? Why theater defense? What does that mean?
I think there is one principle I have mentioned. That's the main principle, which means that for the services, they were mainly in charge of focusing on developing capabilities. But it's the main also responsibility for the theater commands to look after military operations. So that's the difference. So for the Navy, for the Army, for those kind of different headquarters of service headquarters, they are in charge of developing capabilities. But it's the theater commands who look after military operation in their responsibility of area. So 5 theater commands.
Okay, thank you very much.
Charge of daily military operations, but how to construct Navy, Air Force, how to develop the capabilities of different services, that's the responsibility for the services.
Okay, thank you very much for that, because each country has a different way of structuring its armed forces, and China is one that I'm completely unfamiliar with. And just for clarity, is the PLA officially Xi Jinping is officially the commander-in-chief of the entire armed forces, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Both in terms of the Chinese people's Communist Party of China have a Central Military Committee, and our national also have a National Central Military Committee. He served as the chairman of both these 2 military committees.
Right, because the specialty about the PLA is that it is actually the military arm of the Communist Party, right? It's something that's different from other countries.
Yeah, 2 Central Military Committees. Actually, they are the same.
Okay, then maybe let's talk a little bit about the strategic situation for China. I mean, in here on YouTube, but also in on other platforms, something that we see often is this map that shows the U.S. bases that are distributed all around China, right? In Japan, in the Philippines, in Korea, and there are even in the Western side, people who say like China has been encircled, and the strategy of the U.S. is to keep China encircled, to kind of use the first island chain to contain China, quote unquote. Is that something that is actually a problem to people like you, to military people in the Chinese forces? Does China see itself as encircled, or is that just something that we project?
I think many factors play out in answering these questions. I may speak from geographical, historical, and geopolitical perspective. Geographically speaking, it is a fact there are two chains of islands surrounding China, and no one can change this fact. Historically, the U.S. military presence in the Asia Pacific, and the U.S. alliance and the partnerships are legacies from the Second World War. I mean, as you mentioned, for U.S. military presence in the Asia Pacific, the United States maintains a substantial military presence in the Asian Pacific region, including key bases in Japan, South Korea, and Guam, and as well various facilities in other countries like in the Philippines and Australia. The U.S. Navy is the Seventh Fleet based in Yokosuka, Japan, is particularly significant for its operational scope in Western Pacific. For U.S. alliances and partnerships, the U.S. has formal alliance with several countries in the region, including Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Thailand, and Australia. So this alliance often includes mutual defense commitments and joint military exercise. However, the key point is the U.S. has in recent years intentionally and in a calculated way taken advantage of those presence and alliance and partnerships to further boost its strategic posture in Asia Pacific. It has constantly adjusting its Asia Pacific strategy, increasing military presence and military operations, which many Chinese strategists view as part of a broader strategy to counter China's rise.
Yeah, so the pivot to Asia is something that started under Mr. Obama, and
Yeah.
is continuing today. How much does it worry you? How much are you worried about the presence of the US in very close to China? On a scale from 1 to 10, how worried are you?
I think first, it is reality. You have to face it every day. And second, I think it's a good opportunity to train our own forces. Only facing the strong armed forces, that can make you more stronger. And also, as I mentioned, that is a historical legacy. So this kind of we used to call it hegemony poster by the United States is a reality. It's a historical reality. Yeah, it has been it's worked there since the Second World War. But that being said, because the situation is developing, I think they should look at the situation and change their way of doing things.
Now, since you're an international lawyer, you have a lot of background in legal thinking. And one thing that has been on my mind for a long time is the way that China has claims, not only on certain islands in the East China Sea and South China Sea, but also on entire bodies of water. The most famous is, of course, the so-called 9-dash line, and I will show a little picture of this here later on, where China basically has a claim on an entire body of water, like really, really close with the Philippines, going all the way down to Southeast Asia and Vietnam, and says that these waters should be recognized as Chinese under Chinese control. What is the legal basis for this claim?
Okay, Pascal, let me first challenge your question.
Okay.
Have you ever sent one official lines from the Chinese official papers, legal documents, which said that all the waters within the non-dash line are Chinese territorial waters or Chinese internal waters. Have you ever seen such official lines?
No, I have never seen the wording, but I must say on the officially published map from that I've seen from China, the dashes that are used to carve out the territory are the same that are used to indicate the borders of China itself. So
the line, yes, the line is the fact. Yeah, we have the line. There are various names, non-dash line and dotted line, but there's no official paper which claim that we claim all the waters within the non-dash line as territorial waters or internal waters, domestic waters.
Okay.
First, let me clarify on the origin of the dotted line. The Chinese government commissioned in 1947 the compilation of 南海诸岛地理志略. It's in English it's a brief account of the geography of the South China Sea Islands. Reviewed and approved 南海诸岛新旧名称对照表 in Chinese, comparison table on the old and new names of the South China Sea Islands, and drew 南海诸岛位置图 in English. We drew a location map of the South China Sea Islands, on which it is here, on which the dotted line is marked. So this is the origin. And then in February 1948, the Chinese government officials published 中华民国行政区域图 in English, map of the administrative districts of the Republic of China, including 南海诸岛位置图. I mean, including the location map of the South China Sea Island. So that is the original origin of this dotted line. I mean, and the map. So this position has been followed by by all the governments, by all the. I mean, since that we have been following that position. I mean, historically, I would not like to repeat the official lines, but still I would like to state some facts. I mean, the activities of the Chinese people in the South China Sea, I think it dates back to over 2,000 years ago, and China is the first to have discovered, named, explored, and exploited 南海诸岛. And relevant waters. And China is also the first to have continuously, peacefully, and effectively exercised sovereignty and jurisdiction over them. So China's sovereignty over 南海诸岛 and its relevant rights and interests in the South China Sea have been established in a long course of history, upheld by the successive Chinese governments for a long time, and universally recognized by the international community. Specifically for the legal claim, this is the question often thrown to me. So what exactly does it mean, the non-dash line? I think there are several layers of meanings of the non-dash line, the dotted line. First, China has sovereignty over 南海诸岛, which consists of 东沙群岛, 西沙群岛, 中沙群岛, and 南沙群岛. Second, China has internal waters, territorial sea, and a contiguous zone based on 南海诸岛. Third, China has exclusive economic zone and a continental shelf based on 南海诸岛. China has historical rights in the South China Sea, finally. So China's position, as stated above, is clear, consistent, and solidly grounded in history and the law. So these are overlapped. I mean, the above statement overlap with some official lines. But what I would like to see in the following is my own personal perspective. So the key issue in the South China Sea is not about the dotted line, not about the non-dotted line. It is about the dispute over islands and the U.S. leverage of this dispute to push geopolitical competition, to push geopolitical gains from China. So here I would like to mention two important concepts of international law. First is about intertemporal law, and second about the principle of uti possidetis, a Latin word. So for the first concept, the intertemporal law, it regulates the conflict of laws relating to time. It determines which law is applicable at which time, and specifically the applicability of a rule to the case that occurred before its creation or entry into force. So for this case, the dotted line is in there. What's in there in 1447, but at that time, there is no United Nations Convention on the law of the sea. So you cannot apply the current law to the previous activities. So that is what we say. That is what we say. The intertemporal law. It's a principle based in international law. Second principle, more importantly, is a principle of uti possidetis, UTI, POSSIDETIS. It's a Latin word. Uti possidetis is a principle of international law that is used to determine the borders of newly independent states. The principle holds that the borders of a new state should be based on administrative boundaries that existed at the time of independence. So this principle is particularly relevant for the states that gain independence from a colonial power, as it provides a clear and relatively easy way to determine the borders of new states, allowing for a peaceful and orderly transition to independence. So the principle of uti possidetis is based on the idea that newly independent states should have a stable and recognizable territorial base, and that the borders should be determined by the actual position and control of the territory at the time of independence. This principle is intended to prevent disputes over territory that might arise after independence by providing a clear and objective way to determine the borders of the new states. This principle is rooted in Roman law, and it has been applied in various contexts throughout the history. The principle was first broadly applied in the context of decolonization after the Second World War, when many states in Africa and Asia gained independence from colonial powers. The principle was also applied in the dissolution of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, as well as in other cases of state disintegration. So that's the background of this principle. So let's look at, for example, the Philippines. What is their boundary of territorial sea? So pursuant to Article 1 of 1933 Constitution of the Philippines, the territory of the Philippines is defined by a series of international treaties, including the 1898 Treaty of Peace between the United States of America and the Kingdom of Spain, the Treaty of Paris, we say, and the 1900 Treaty between the United States of America and the Kingdom of Spain. For cession of outlying islands of Philippines, we refer it to the Treaty of Washington, and the 1932 Convention between United Kingdom and the United States regarding the boundary between the state of Northern Borneo and the Philippine archipelago. So 南海诸岛, 南沙群岛, is completely beyond the limits of the Philippine territory.
The South China Sea and East China Sea, yes, they're the waters between the Philippines and mainland China, yes.
So the key issue is a double standard in application of international law and weaponizing international law to achieve geopolitical gains. I mean, it's only applied to China. When it's up to other place, it's okay.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you that the West has double standards all the time, everywhere, and that they are twisting around international law in a way that it suits their geopolitical purposes. This is utterly clear. What is not clear to me is the relationship between China and the Philippines is one that could be very friendly. And the Philippines would be a country that, at least hypothetically, should be not that antagonistic to China, also like looking at the trade relationship and so on. But the matter of the fact is that China has claims on territories that also the Philippines claim, especially the reef. Sorry, now I forgot the name of the reef. Well, that's very embarrassing. What was the name of the reef in English?
仁爱礁 Second Thomas Strong.
That one and the one before to the
仁爱
south.
礁 I
Yeah,
think it's 仁爱礁 Second Thomas Strong.
the
Are you
the it will come back to me, but the one that the dispute was about, the 2016 ruling of the arbitrational ruling, and so in 2016 there was this arbitration case based on UNCLOS and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, right? That both the Philippines and China are signatories to, which is an instrument that is supposed to kind of chart out the basic rules for which nation has what kind of claims of the waters, and especially also over the natural resources. For the Philippines, most importantly, the fishing grounds, right? So then the question is, these different reefs and atolls, do they create exclusive economic zones, yes or no? But China and Philippines are both signatories to this, and yet China claims certain territories and waters around the territories of the Philippines, and also regularly with the Coast Guard chases away Filipino fishermen, and the Philippines keep saying, hey, China, please, our fishermen have been fishing there for hundreds of years. These waters and the fish in these waters are really important for us. Please don't take them away. And even Rodrigo Duterte, who got elected in 2016, after the Philippines won this legal case, decided not to push China on it, right? He remained relatively silent, but still the Coast Guard kept chasing fishermen away and really causing a lot of hardship for Filipinos. Why is that the approach of China, instead of trying to kind of woo the Philippines over and away from the United States?
Let me maybe first I can mention the fact why there are no problem for quite a long time. I mean, before we published the non-dotted line, the dotted line in 1947, and between this time and the time the resources are found because of the survey in 1970s. That's one point I'd like to mention. And also why there are no troubles, no intense situations when Duterte is in his administration. So in my opinion, the normal access by the fishermen, the normal navigation, the normal activities, and even the supply by humanitarian purposes from the Philippines to the ship, the Sierra Madre ship is allowed. There is no problem. So why it is a problem now? Why there is interaction between the frontline coast guards between the two countries? I think we do not change in any way. Ever since 1947, our position with regard to the territorial claim, we do not change. We do not change. It's because of a change on top of the Philippines, the other countries. That's provoked and that invited our response. So they are taking proactive actions. We are doing something in response. I think that is the key issue. So in response to Philippines' proactive and provocative actions, to reinforce its unlawful existence in Renaijiao, I mean the BRP serial module, the ship, the Philippine ship. So it's because of our response to that. So there are interactions. I mean, you know, the Philippine dilapidated Philippine Navy ship has been aground since 1999. The Philippine government has promised to take it away, and the two sides have agreements that humanitarian maintenance is allowed. But now the new Philippine government broke the promise and want to reconstruct the ship and want to make it a permanent military base. So it's the change on the Philippine side which invites our reaction. So there are many evidence. So if you look at their Senate, the Senate, there are many senators. In August, one senator suggests that the allocations of a budget to build a new facilities in where the ship is aground. And also, Philippine Senate have just passed their new government budget. According to an interview by CNN, one senator disclosed that it does have a portion of budget, which means to reconstruct something on that particular area. So it is in response to the Philippine proactive actions. So there are troubles. There are interactions between the two frontline coast guards. And also, I would like to mention it is against the spirit of the DOC and the COC. In particular, China and some South Pacific countries, we are discussing the new code of conduct based on the previous 2002 declaration of conduct, declaration DOC. So within the text, we all know that there should no changes. The status quo should be maintained. So it is because the Philippines is changing the status quo, so we have to respond. I think that is the most important thing. And finally, you mentioned that also about the mutual defense treaty between Philippines and the United States. I think on the Philippine side, they, to some extent, want to hijack the mutual defense treaty to boost their actions, their frontline actions. So their illusion is that, so those actions, because of those actions by the Philippines, is covered by the mutual assistance, by the mutual defense treaties. So when China takes actions, the United States will come to their assistance. So they are not afraid. I think that's another point.
You know, what I hate very much about territorial disputes, especially about islands, is that this is such a dumb thing to quarrel about, because it's either mine or it's yours. And it makes both people in both countries feel very, very hot and very, very angry, because both sides think it should be ours. The problem to the Chinese position is that the 2016 ruling, of course, UNCLOS found that, it backed the Philippine positions 100%, and actually China didn't participate in the arbitration, presumably because it was such a clear case. Do you have any thoughts on the UNCLOS ruling of 2016?
We officially do not admit and we do not recognize the ruling. We didn't participate, and because my background is legal. Mm-hmm. So from the legal perspective, even many Western scholars, they are quite frustrated by the ruling, because there are some facts. It's just a fact. They just turn a blind eye to the fact. Let me give you an example. Ito Aba. Ito Aba is whether it belongs to Taiwan or belongs to the mainland China, it belongs to China. Only the Ito Aba is an island. This fact will defeat the whole ruling, because as long as Ito Aba is the island, it will defeat the legal basis for the whole ruling. And also, if you apply to the same ruling to many islands occupied by the United States in many Pacific areas, it will not have territorial status. And as for I mentioned at the beginning about double standard and the application of international law, a weaponization of the application of international law. It is the truth. Just one point is the use of nuclear weapon against international law. The judges of International Court of Justice could take a long deliberation to finally reach consensus. In extreme cases, it is not illegal. So for the international adjudication, for all those recent years, I think I should mention the moral integrity by the West when they apply international law. Just give a very simple example. The same action, when it is done by Israel in Gaza, it is okay. No ICC prosecution, no any sanctions. But when it is in the Russia-Ukraine conflicts, everything will be poured in. Take the ICC, for example. When ICC International Criminal Court initiates application to the United States in terms of Afghanistan or Iraq war, Mr. Pompeo just sanctioned the chief prosecutor. But when it comes to Russia-Ukraine conflict, you see many changes. First, the ICC, led by the chief prosecutor, which is a UK professor, they sent the ever-large land investigator to Ukraine. And second, the EU, they allocated a huge amount of budget to support ICC action. And third, if you look at the United States the State Department, they established an organization called the Conflict Observatory. It's an official branch of the State Department to provide evidence for the ICC. So it's absolutely, I think it's kind of the moral integrity. They should ask the question of the moral integrity. Why the same action when the invasion happened in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in former Yugoslavia, in Libya, it is not aggression. There are no war crimes. And then when it happens in Russia-Ukraine conflict, then it's a war crime.
Of course, no, and there's no question, and everybody who watches this channel knows absolutely how the West, and it's not just the United States, it's also Europe, is absolutely hypocritical when it comes to their principles. The principles only count in one scenario, not in the other. That's absolutely clear, which is why when we talk about international relations, we don't even need to really discuss this. What we need to understand is how the different actors try to use this arena, right, to state their claims. Now, freedom of navigation. Are the US freedom of navigation operations a problem to you or to China, or do you view them as, something that you do as well in the rest of the Pacific?
Yes, my PhD dissertation, the name of my PhD dissertation is the Freedom of Navigation in International Law, Sources, History, and State Practice. That's my PhD paper. So for the freedom of navigation, in particular in the South China Sea, first let me say the fact. There's no issue of freedom of navigation with regard to civilian merchant ships. And also the insurance rate has never been raised in the South China Sea. But the freedom of navigation became a problem in 2015 when the US made the first high-profile claims freedom of navigation in South China Sea in October of 2015. They sent the destroyer lesson into South China Sea. And that does not mean the US did not conduct freedom of navigation operations in South China Sea before. Actually, it has conducted many times freedom of navigation in not only South China Sea, but also the East China Sea. So as for the freedom of navigation, I think if you look at the facts I mentioned, it is just a lie and excuse for US to make agenda setting in the South China Sea, because the US has no territorial claim in South China Sea. So how can the United States make themselves involved in the South China Sea. So freedom of navigation is a very beautiful word. The point is, the United States, the freedom for the United States is not the freedom of merchant ships, it's freedom of their navy, of their military vessels, military aircraft, to freely make reconnaissance activity, to freely intrude into the territorial waters of our countries. So that is the essence. I think I just only want to mention one historical fact very quickly. I think for the change of position on the United States, back in 1930, first codification of international law of the sea, the position of the United States is that military vessels cannot enter the territorial sea without permission. That is the United States position. But the former Soviet Union holds the opposite position at that time in 1930. And then in around 1950s, as the time of the second codification by the United Nations on the international law of the sea, the U.S. changed its position that the military vessels have the same rights of innocent passage with the civilian vessels in territorial sea. They do not have to need any restrictions, need any permissions. But the former Soviet Union, they changed their position to the very opposite. They said that it will need permission. Then in 1988, there was the Black Sea bumping incidents, and then the negotiation between the U.S. and the former Soviet Union. They reached an agreement. There is a memorandum about the exercise of innocent passage by military vessels in territorial sea. They reached agreement that no need of permission. So the two major powers, maritime powers, they changed their position. But up to now, still there are about 55 countries still have domestic laws, which mention that it is not that military vessels do not have rights of innocent passage in the territorial sea. It is that they can access the right, but they have to get approval, get permission, or they have to make notification. So that's the historical fact. I will just end here.